name is Marnie Dow. I serve as the Assistant Director for Student Involvement, and I use the pronouns she, her, and hers. I'm really looking forward to today's panel. Megan, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself as well?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. My name is Megan Brower, and I'm the Assistant Director for Fraternity and Sorority Life, also in Student Involvement and Activities, and I use the pronouns she, her, hers. I did want to let you all know that we are recording this for folks who aren't able to join the live session, so just be aware of that. And I will also be monitoring the chat during our session, so wanted to mention that before we got too far into it. If you're able to unmute yourself and you want to ask a question that way, please feel free, or via the chat. I will be monitoring that the entire time.
Okay. All right. So before we get any further, there's one thing I want to take care of. I wanted to go ahead and read a quick land acknowledgement. The University of Nevada, Las Vegas wishes to acknowledge and honor the indigenous communities of this region and recognize that the university is situated on the traditional homelands of the UNLV Southern Paiute people. We offer gratitude for the land itself and for those who have stewarded it for generations, and for the opportunity to study, learn, work, and be in community with this land. We encourage everyone in this space to engage in continued learning about the indigenous peoples who work and live in this land since time immemorial, including the Las Vegas Paiute tribe and the Mwapa Band of Paiutes, and about the historical and present realities of colonialism. As one of the most diverse universities in the United States, UNLV believes it is important to recognize and appreciate the use of Southern Paiute land as part of its mission and be a welcoming and inclusive space for working and learning. So the hope for today is when Megan and I sat and thought about what we wanted to accomplish in today's session, we really wanted today to be about resources for our advisors. I know all the time we get questions about how do I handle this situation? What do I tell a student who is in this, having this trouble, et cetera. There's just a lot of things that are coming up, particularly now, and that's why I put this in the title, in these challenging times, which is, I think, everybody's least favorite phrase these days. So we put together a panel of people on campus that we think can really provide some great information about resources, about trends that we're seeing on campus, about how to handle some of the most common things that are popping up. Our hope really is that this is generated, that the conversation is generated by you, the advisors. So we would love to hear whatever questions you have. We certainly have a list of questions that we're going to work through, but we want to make sure, more importantly than getting to our questions, that we get to your questions. And so as the conversation goes on, feel free to drop your questions in the chat. We'll either ask them right away, or I can, I'm going to keep a list of them in case we want to get to them a little later. Also, if you'd rather just, we'll make sure at the end there's some time to ask questions where you can just unmute yourself and speak directly to the panelists. We'll make sure we make some time for that as well. Megan, you think I left anything out before we get started? All right. So I think the first thing we would love to do is actually just have our panelists go ahead and introduce themselves. I think just for the ease of the weird Zoom layout, I'll kind of call on each of you in order. But then after that, whoever wants, there's no need to kind of like raise hands. We'll just kind of chime in as we go. Can you just tell us your name and obviously your position on campus and the department that you're in? That would be really helpful. Savannah, you want to start us off?
Hi everyone, my name is Savannah Valterra. I use the pronouns she, her, and hers, and I am the Director of Student Involvement and Activities.
All right, Kat, you want to go next?
Hi, my name is Catherine Burdick. I use she, her, hers. I am a financial aid counselor in the Financial Aid and Scholarships office.
All right, Luke?
Hi everyone, I'm Luke Jensen, pronouns he, his, him. I work at the Counseling and Psychological Services as the Associate Director of Clinical Services.
Fantastic. And then Scott, you want to go next for us?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Scott Hoffman. I serve as the care manager for the UNLV Support Team, working to connect students who are in distress in some way with campus resources, and I use the pronouns he, him, his.
Great, thank you. And then I know we have one more panelist who's going to join us in a few minutes, Russell from the UNLV Wellness Zone. He's finishing up a program on another Zoom call, but he'll be with us shortly. So we'll make sure we enter him into the fold then as well. Megan, why don't you get us started with that first question?
Sure, this is a easy one, I hope. So we have a collection of registered student organization advisors who work at UNLV, as well as some volunteer advisors for our fraternities and sororities who may not be quite as familiar as with UNLV's campus partners and the resources that we have to offer. So could all of you kind of go around and share just some basic services, some basic information about your department and your services that you offer to support students? And we'll just go in the same order that we did introductions, if that works.
Sure. So student involvement in activities houses the following areas. So we house fraternity and sorority life. We house student organizations, and then our campus activities, campus programming board, the Rebel Events Board is part of student involvement activities, and then connected, but still their own organization is Csun Student Government. So Csun in and of itself is an autonomous organization, but the full-time staff report up through student involvement activities. I think most of the advisors know Marnie and Megan because of their roles in SIA. So I think the one thing I do want to highlight, I don't think comes up as often, is the funding available to student organizations through Csun. So Csun does allocate, depending on the year, anywhere from $250,000 to $350,000 per year to fund student organizations. And so it's a really great resource and not fully tapped by RSOs. The website, the Csun website, unlv.edu/Csun, has a very comprehensive step-by-step guide, thanks mostly to Marnie and the Ways and Means Committee for putting that together. But I think advisors just need to be aware that that's a resource that's available to RSOs that definitely we want to get the word out even more. So that's the one I wanted to highlight.
Many of you may already be familiar with the Financial Aid and Scholarships Office, but the name is kind of what we do. So we award and process federal financial aid, which includes scholarships and grants, loans. We also do process institutional awards, so additional departmental scholarships, kind of how Savannah was talking about. And then we also do a lot of work study programs, and we also, counsel students to the best of our abilities in terms of money management, and again, help with the federal financial aid process or any institutional awarding.
So student counseling and psychological services, we offer a variety of different services, primarily including group, individual, and couple counseling. We do offer crisis services during business hours if a student is presenting or struggling in a crisis situation where they can call or come in. Currently our services are primarily telehealth, but we do have the ability to see people in office or in person. Those are kind of two different things, but just so you're aware, if you're referring a student, our office is technically still open if they're needing to walk in or if there's privacy issues and things like that. So again, crisis assessment intervention. We do hold psychiatrists and some psychiatric residents for medication evaluation and management services. We also provide educational outreach and programming for things that promote mental health and well-being. And so, our mission is to certainly obviously promote mental health and well-being, support students during, it's a unique time for college. You're going through a lot of different things. New financial strains, new relationships, juggling work and school and all kinds of things. So, we recognize that at CAPS and support people through that. And with the mission of also kind of supporting their academic success.
I think it's my turn if I remember right. Cool. The UNLV Support Team is a collection of offices from across campus that all work in support of students' mental health and well-being, physical health, along with people who are experienced in campus policy and law enforcement. Some of our offices include CAPS, our Counseling Center, the Student Health Center, the Disability Resource Center, the Office of Student Conduct, Housing and Residential Life, all of the offices that work to support students as they're navigating their college experiences. One of the biggest responsibilities that our team collectively has is to manage the university's support team referral process. We rely on our colleagues across campus, many of whom are in this chat right now, advisors, professors, fellow students, to let our team know whenever they're working with a student who they're concerned about in some way. Maybe it's something low level, relatively low level. Maybe they're not performing well in a class. Maybe they're experiencing low level anxiety, a little bit of a change in their everyday behavior, all the way up the spectrum to students who are experiencing suicidal ideation, who are the victims of crime, who are experiencing a trauma. Wherever along that spectrum a student may be, our team works to connect students with the most appropriate resource. Maybe that's connecting them to a counselor. Maybe that's helping them file a police report. Maybe that's helping them obtain emergency housing on campus or in the local community. You are, as advisors, some of our best partners in helping students get access to the help that they need. So never hesitate to reach out to me or any member of our office and our team, and we'll help you help your students.
Great, thank you. Welcome to Russell. He is also going to be one of our panelists. Russell, you haven't missed much. If you could just introduce kind of yourself and your role at UNLV, and then cover some basic services that your department offers.
Hi, everybody. My name is Russell Arginal. I'm the wellness educator for student wellness and student affairs. I was late because I was actually teaching a webinar on HIV. So that's going to be uploaded on the UNLV Wellness Zone's YouTube page if you are interested in sexual health education. We're an epidemic site, by the way, just anyways. I am the health educator and public health programmer for student affairs. I do most of them. Most of the presentations usually involve sexual health, mental health. I am supervised by counseling and psych services. We also do a lot of programming with alcohol and other drugs, and then also just the general wellness stuff. So physical activity, nutrition, sleep. And so I do a lot of health education, and I work with every department at UNLV. In terms of like physical space, I manage the UNLV Wellness Zone, which is on the second floor of Campus Rec. We are open. You have to wear your mask and stuff, but we are, I think, at 50% capacity now. So with the UNLV Wellness Zone, we have a lot of services available. The most popular one are the massage chairs. We have a relaxation room that's kind of kept dark, but we have 4 massage chairs where you can reserve like at least 24 hours in advance. And then we space them out, sanitize them in between students. So we try to make sure we follow protocols, but if you feel stressed out, that's a great place to go to. We also have all the free condoms, the menstrual products, any mental health resources. Right now you have to ask for them because due to COVID, we don't want people touching them, but our staff are trained. We're kind of immune to like the stigmas with sexual health. If you ask for a condom, we'll just be like, okay, here you go. And then in terms of services, we're the office you go to for personal training inquiries, and then body composition and fitness testing. We also provide those services as well.
Thanks, Russell, for just jumping right in. I appreciate it. I was hoping some of you all could talk a little bit about just some of the bigger issues you're seeing, maybe trends you've seen in your work with students this year, of things that are more in the forefront, particularly right now, issues they're dealing with, concerns, upticks in specific things, whatever you kind of see that you think is specific to your area that might be helpful.
I can speak first. I don't know, I can kind of share at the counseling center that, you know, our top kind of 10 are presenting concerns are things like depression, anxiety, relationship concerns, adjustment kind of problems, academic concerns, trauma, other mood disorders or eating issues, and then those that kind of relate to attention issues. And I don't know, in regard to the pandemic and things like that, if there's been necessarily a shift in those things, more so just the themes feel different, if that makes sense. Like we still see a great deal of students with a lot of anxiety. The themes just feel maybe a little bit different. Anxiety about the future in regard to, getting a job or their finances, relationship concerns as people are kind of staying home more and things like that. So, we haven't, I don't know about any trends of seeing something differently. Like I say, it just the themes and those things have kind of changed. We did see a drop in our crisis services. I think is primarily due to students being off campus. I don't have stats off the top of my head to cite, but I will anticipate that as students begin returning to campus more often and some of the physical impacts of the pandemic wane a little bit, that we're going to see an influx in individuals struggling with mental health related issues. It's purely anecdotal, but I'm thinking that we'll see that. So that's my 2 cents there.
I think in general, students are more open and willing to talk about mental health challenges that they're experiencing than they have been in years past. And I think that's due to a lot of things. You see, the society is kind of moving toward being able to talk about suicide more, accepting the fact that mental health is equally as impactful on a student's physical well-being as their physical health and academic performance. I think we, specifically in higher education, are starting to do a very good job at intentionally asking students how they're doing, and not just in the, oh, hey, how you doing, as a greeting, but to actually bring them in and say, hey, how are you doing? We know that this is stressful. I'm stressed out. I know you're stressed out. Is there any way that we can help you? And over the past year and a half, as we've all collectively navigated COVID and looked forward to the day where we could return to something resembling normalcy, it's important to kind of see that as a partnership that we have with our students, acknowledging that we, as staff members and as advisors, are feeling the stress, and that we're also trying to deal with it, and we're not perfect either. So I think students in general are more open about talking through some of their challenges. And when we all have that knowledge of campus resources and people to refer them to, then that helps get them back on the right track.
I can go next. We have a lot of students who've approached our office and indicated that they have had a lot of financial changes. Due to the pandemic, a lot of students, a lot of families experience and continue to experience financial difficulties that make a huge difference. For instance, the 2021-2022 FAFSA, which is for the upcoming academic year, asked for information from the 2019 tax year. That was before the pandemic hit and before a lot of people lost their jobs. So now we're seeing a huge jump in special income appeals because that information just does not reflect the current reality. It does not reflect a student's or family's ability to pay. And obviously paying and financial aid is a huge part and a huge decision for students to stay in school. So we have had a huge uptick on that, and our office is trying to place a big emphasis on getting those appeals processed, getting them to the students who need them. So if any of the advisors out there or any of the students who have had a lot of financial difficulties or changes, I would advise them to contact our office, and that way we can get that appeal to you, because we really don't know who has been affected until we get that information from the student or from someone else. And so we're just trying to help as much as we can, so that way we can, hopefully get your FAFSA updated to actually reflect your current situation and get students the financial aid that they need to continue their education. I think that is a big one that we've seen, and we're here to help with that.
with regards to the students that I'm working with, stress management is the big one. I've been talking about stress management for the last year now. I think a misconception people have is you're going to talk to a therapist one session, or you're gonna watch a stress management presentation, then the stress like will go away. But that's not the case. You're gonna be stressed out forever, but it's the way you cope with the stressors, and it's like exercise. You have to practice at it every day so you could get better at coping, especially with like isolation, remote work. All of this stuff has like influenced like our sleep quality, the way we interact with people. There are resources that we have at UNLV. I think Luke may have talked about it, I'm not sure, but TAO, Therapy Assisted Online, it's free for all students and all faculty staff. And it's resources that people can use to help with anxiety, depression, stress, and so forth. If you look at UNLV CAPS's website, they have instructions on how to download TAO. You can do it online or through your phone. There's also Cognito, which is how to train people to help others in distress. I'm kind of recognizing the signs if people are kind of going off the ledge. And, you know, a lot of the times when something happens, they just refer them to CAPS. But there's such a long wait list right now that it's like we kind of have to take charge of helping ourselves and helping others around us. And using these resources are great ways to kind of help and give the Band-Aid at the time before they can receive other help. Additionally, in terms of like other public health stuff, STIs and STDs have increased during the pandemic. I gave more condoms out during our closure, like when we were quarantined, than during normal school operations. And Southern Nevada Health District has said STIs have skyrocketed. So, you know, sexual health is something we don't talk about a lot at UNLV. It's kind of stigmatized. So our office in the Wellness Zone, like we provide all those like resources for STI prevention. And if you don't feel comfortable talking about sex, but students are talking to you about that, or you kind of see something, then you can always refer them to like a person in wellness, and then we'll be able to help them out.
And I wanted to mention just from like the involvement perspective, there are concerns from students and from faculty and staff that first year students who are very soon going to be second year students who didn't get that traditional in-person college experience, that there's concerns about, you know, their ability to build relationships and make those connections and find like where their community at UNLV once we are in a more in-person normal situation. And so we are definitely in the involvement side, we're definitely aware of that and all of the work that we're going to have to do to make sure that these students, those first year students who are going to be in their sophomore year, who we missed out on a year of that in person, and then of course the incoming students coming in the fall. And so I think as advisors, it's important for you all to kind of be aware of that too, as students join your organizations, hopefully in fall or in the spring of they're going to be very unsure of what that looks like and what opportunities are available to them because they haven't been able to do those usual steps of transition into higher education and college.
Awesome. Thank you all. Thanks for painting such a comprehensive picture of all of the stressors that our students are facing right now. So going off of that, it's pretty clear that our students need to be practicing healthy coping skills. So what advice would you have for advisors to help their students practice those healthy coping skills?
It's a weighted question, and maybe it's because of my professional background, I guess. So, you know, coming from a perspective of I'm not certain exactly how long each, and maybe it depends on the situation, how much time you get to spend with the student. I would say first and foremost, you know, we always preach this idea of self-care, I think, and I would say, like, be sure you're also modeling that behavior and being able to talk with students about maybe things you're doing to manage stress. I think Scott was mentioning, we as, employees and those that are supporting students are also kind of stressed. So I think if you're able to kind of demonstrate some vulnerability and like, hey, this is what I do, I don't know if, and kind of sharing it that way and maybe some suggestions. I mean, I always think it's nice to have resources in the back of your pocket. Obviously, hey, have you, not as like I think it's important as advisors, if you will, that you're validating the students too that might be, that sounds like a really particularly struggle or difficult time. I'm so sorry you're going through that, rather than jumping directly to those resources. I mean, you definitely want to be able to give the resources too, but I think it goes a long way just being able to kind of share some validation. I always think of this concept of balance, which I think people talk about, and I don't think it really exists. So I think balance is more of like situations change and just taking a step back of like, where am I lacking? I think, midterms or finals are a good example where your pie, 100% of the pie is like your balance. And obviously the academic portion of that pie is going to open up during midterms and finals for students. But if there's also this like equilibrium period where it's like, okay, I was pretty stressed. Now I got to kind of like, what else am I doing to kind of manage stress? I kind of took this time to focus on this issue. I don't know if that kind of answers the question, but in short, getting some good self-care behaviors that you can also speak of. I mean, that relates from, it could really be almost anything: hobbies, exercise, taking a step back from the news when you're feeling particularly overwhelmed with those kinds of stories, like interaction or quality interaction with others. And I think Scott also talked about like asking students questions, and it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to ask direct questions. And I think, some of that can be like, hey, do you have a good kind of some coping mechanisms, or what are you doing to manage your stress? Or you look particularly stressed, is that, or this seems stressful, are you stressed out? And what can I do to kind of support you? Or what resources can we review with you that might kind of be beneficial? So don't hesitate to ask direct questions.
Yeah, I think right at the beginning of any quote unquote typical school year with a new organization, there's that period of time where everybody is excited, everybody's happy, everybody's getting along well, that honeymoon period, right? This year might be a little bit different, and we might be starting from a place of at the very, very ground level with some of our students. Some of our organizations maybe don't really have any active members in it yet, and that's okay. I think starting out by acknowledging with the students who are involved in your groups that they're going to have to first take time to orient themselves back to going to school. If they are going to be on campus, that's okay. They don't have to dive into their leadership role within their fraternity or sorority or within their organization day one before they even know how to navigate campus. I was talking with a student, I think it was back in January, and he was in his second year. And he told me that he has his very first in-person class in his second year, and he didn't know where CBC was. Okay. Like Savannah said, we're going to have students who are academically juniors in their third year here who maybe have spent one semester on campus. If we have to make this first little bit of the school year with a slow build of our organizations, cool. I think acknowledging that students need to make sure they're comfortable in this space first is a primary goal. And as an advisor, asking students how you could help them do that will go a long way. So yeah, I think trying to find that balance, we'll hear that word a lot, balance, is going to be important for everybody involved.
Being realistic too, I think, is very important. I advise two student groups, Active Minds and the Pre-Professional Wellness Club, and both groups have different objectives and goals for the semester. When we were talking about the timeline, many of my students were trying to operate as if we were not in a pandemic, right? Trying to do the same amount of activities, being disappointed when people weren't showing up to meetings and stuff. And so taking a step back and being realistic with your organizations to have goals that are manageable, and to let them know that it's okay that if you're not performing at that same success as before, because times are not the same. Also to show up for your students. I think it's easy when we're doing remote work to get overwhelmed and then like we leave them hanging for weeks. But if you emulate that behavior to them, then they're not going to be as invested in their organization as well, from my experience. Students need the support. So, not necessarily telling them what to do, but just checking up on them to make sure that they're okay and just staying on track and being focused with their group.
So as a follow-up to that, I think a lot of this has to do with an advisor's relationship with the individual students. Every advisor is different. Every student organization is different. It is obvious from our advisors are here that they are invested. They're here. They're taking the time out of it. Everyone's busy. You're taking the time. That shows that you care about your individual students. So my question to you as our panelists is, what are some tips you would give advisors on how to initiate those check-in conversations? Luke kind of alluded to this in his last answer, but like, how do you start those conversations? What are some tips you all can give? How do you, especially with everything, every time you check in with someone, everyone feels loaded. So how can you kind of create meaningful check-ins, and what kind of behaviors or interactions are maybe going to spark concern in an advisor when they hear them or see them from a student?
I can kind of start that, and I'll reference something Russell mentioned earlier, and that is our Cognito training. And I'll just put a caveat to say that anything of what I'm about to say is not in place of Cognito. I'd strongly encourage you all to look at the Cognito training that kind of goes over this very topic in terms of having difficult conversations, primarily related to mental health, but I think the skills could be applicable to other things as well. The training is free, kind of goes through some modules. So I think back to this direct questions thing, there's a little formula and a different kind of training called QPR. Q stands for questioning. Again, it can really apply to anything, but it's asking those direct questions of like, you don't have to skirt around things. Are you feeling stressed? It seems like, are you having thoughts of suicide? Being direct. P stands for persuade. So you know what resources or referrals that might be available to the student, and kind of like, hey, have you heard of this? Let's kind of, I think that this could be really beneficial. This is what, and then the R would be refer. And it could be like, let's conference call over to the counseling center and make an appointment, or what can I do to kind of, do you know where this is? Can I walk you over there, show you on a map, and like make sure they're actually getting to the resource. I think too, on certain topics or like sensitive things, it's okay to also ask permission to kind of like generate the start. Hey, would it be okay if we talk a little bit about your academics? I mean, I think sometimes people just kind of appreciate like, okay, like they kind of gave me a little bit of a warning. And if they say no, maybe I'll have to figure out how to address it from there. I asked because I was really concerned and was hoping I could kind of help you with. But I think it kind of sometimes goes a long way when on those sensitive topics, you can also ask for permission to kind of start a conversation. So also, I think expectations. So again, I'm not too familiar with how often you're meeting with students or what, but maybe also setting up so there's not this anxiety like, hey, when we be checking in, I'm going to be asking about this. I hope that that's okay each time. Would there be something helpful for you in those meetings? But generally, I would like to check in about X, Y, and Z, so they kind of know what to expect, and that you're there and you care, and et cetera. And I obviously I can't stress enough rapport. And so building the rapport relationship and showing that interest that you mentioned to your students, I think is going to go a long way as well. And just them opening up and making those conversations easier.
I think there's power in the subtleties of things. So when you're talking to a student on WebEx, it's so easy to have 2 or 3 screens open and your eyes are doing this. Students pick up when you're not invested in them. So if you're talking to a student and they need your attention, it's important to give it to them. I mean, obviously, you're busy, but would you be texting them when you're talking to them in person? You know what I mean? Students see your eyes roaming around. If you're wearing glasses, they can see the reflection. Like that, those little things really do matter, in my opinion. Um, and then other tips for that too would be, I don't think you necessarily need to follow up and check in on how they're doing unless they're actually asking you for it. But if you haven't heard from them in weeks, they probably do need some attention. And when you ask them to check up on them, I think it's really okay to just be honest and straightforward and ask them, I am checking up on you, and being honest about it instead of sugarcoating things and beating around the bush, because we all don't have time for that, to do that, the fancy language. We don't care. And the Gen Zs don't care either. They're all about being raw and real and then posting it on TikTok. But so it just being real with your students and just being invested and being genuine and authentic. I think that's what students will like as an advisor.
I might have missed some of the questions, so thanks, Russell, for adding some of that. The other thing I was just going to mention is obviously, like, as you get to know students, but if you're noticing a significant change in the student's behavior or their performance or not following through with appointments when they typically have, or obviously others expressing concern in the student, you really want to be aware of those things, or if they've mentioned being stressed multiple times and it's kind of seems prolonged, like those are maybe, things you're being attuned to of things you're following up on and connecting them with those resources or having those further conversations.
And I think it's also important to remember that students are not obligated to talk about any of the challenges that they are experiencing with any staff member. As much as we could throw the fact that we care about their well-being out into the universe and we're concerned about them, sometimes a student just does not want to divulge what they're going through, if they're going through something at all. And sometimes the best that we can do is to make sure that a student is aware of resources that are available to them in case they want to go about utilizing them. Sometimes we'll find that a student does make an appointment with a counselor or requests a no contact order with the student, and we'll just never know that. But the fact that you planted that seed where you made them aware that this is an option, that's one of the best things that you could possibly do. So don't mistake a student not wanting to share their experience with you for you not being able to help them, because that's not necessarily true at all.
All right, so I think this has been awesome so far, and thank you all so much for sharing all of your experiences and wisdom and knowledge for our advisors here today. So let's break it down and make it a little bit more tangible for folks. So if advisors are working with students and they're going through, an advisor has a concern about a student, or they discuss a student who might be going through some type of issue in any of your areas, how should an advisor get in touch with you, and how should a student get in touch with you if those paths are different? And if they're the same, then mention that too. But where can folks find you?
I think I could start out. Whenever any member of the campus community, staff member, student, volunteer in the local community is concerned about a student, we encourage them to complete a UNLV Support Team referral. And the website is super easy to remember. It's unlv.edu/support Support Team. And I will be happy to throw that in the chat box so people can bookmark it. Right in the middle of the page, there is a big red button that says Support Team Referral. That form is your gate into making sure that a student is able to access any support that they need. By completing a referral, you are sharing information with a team of mental health professionals who could help a student get help, whatever that looks like for them. You are able to complete, oh, thank you, snaps to Marnie for doing that. You are able to submit a referral anonymously if you are concerned about a student knowing who's submitting the referral. Sometimes students who want to share concerns about other students want to take advantage of that. Sometimes that limits how our team could reach back out to the referrer to get more information, but we'd rather have some information than not. What we found is that students are very hesitant to refer themselves to this team, even though they certainly can. For students, I would encourage them to maintain a good awareness of campus resources, and you could certainly help them as their advisor do that. So they could reach out to any individual office if they would like more information about that office, or they could reach out directly to me. I kind of serve in a guidance counselor role to help them navigate the campus and figure out what's right for them. So there's a million different ways to access us.
And building off of that, I think the distinction between a UNLV support team, please chime in back, Scott, if I've got this wrong, but the distinction between maybe referring the student directly to the counseling center, or say walking them over to the counseling center, or say conference calling to help schedule them an appointment if you're worried about them not following through with the referral, is that first off, CAPS has to talk to the student directly in order to make the appointment. The other thing is, unfortunately, we are willing to, talk with any campus employee, faculty member, whatever, if they're wanting some suggestions on dealing with a situation regarding a student. They could call and talk to our provider that's covering our crisis services to kind of get a consultation. But unfortunately, CAPS does not reach out to students unless we've had contact with that student, at least at some point, if that makes sense. So the distinction being, when you refer to the UNLV support team, they're going to reach out to the student and see what resources. When you're referring to the counseling center, it's kind of at least on the student to a degree to make the first appointment. Or again, you could conference call if you're worried about or they are wanting some assistance. Hey, let's make this call together and get you an appointment, but they'll have to talk with you or whatever. You could do a conference call or speakerphone or whatever, but that's how you can kind of access our services. For outreach, if you're wanting a specific, maybe a topic covered for a group, there's an outreach form you can complete online on our website, say like stress management. I know Russell does a lot of that, so sometimes they're ongoing. I think, Russell, I don't know if after I'm done talking, you could talk a little bit about that schedule for outreach presentations that went out, because we also have some rolling ones, but so that's what I'd say, I guess.
I don't know if I sent it to Marnie for the RSO newsletter. So I think it's in the RSO newsletter, the April wellness calendar workshops. If you Google the UNLV wellness cluster, the wellness cluster, it kind of breaks it down on which division of student wellness can help with certain issues. I think everybody tends to just, oh, the students having an issue, let's bring them to CAPS. And then CAPS kind of just, they do their best to kind of separate it to who's the appropriate person. But as an advisor, if you could kind of just look at wellness and see, the Care Center does a lot of work with sexual assault and advocacy. Public, the health promotion is a lot of with, prevention work and public health. The Student Health Center, a lot of people don't know this, but if students have questions about anything health related, they can make appointments with the provider to just talk to them about anything with physical health. A lot of things that's common right now are students have anxiety over the vaccine. And so they can actually make appointments to talk to a doctor, just an information session, and it's covered in the tuition. So, I mean, obviously, I'm gonna throw Scott under the bus of it and like send them to Scott, and Scott works in wellness and he can delegate it too. But all of us that are employees in wellness kind of know what to do and who to send them to. But I think Scott's the main one who can navigate those situations for people.
And Russell, if that's throwing me under the bus, feel free to throw me under the bus all you want. In terms of the students who are referred to our team, I do most of the outreach to them. So if you are looking to connect a student with a human being rather than just a referral form or a random phone number for a campus office you're aware of, feel free to send them my way, either have them give me a call, an email, Zoom, whatever's going to make them feel comfortable to speak about what's going on. So happy to help out however we can.
So for our office, things are a little bit different. Our physical location is still closed, and I don't have a date of when we will reopen. So everything did shift to online. So previously we had a lot of, advisors come with their students, counselors come with their students to kind of help guide the conversation at the front desk, because they were really unsure what kind of questions they should be asking, what the actual problem is, like what they need to do to get things resolved. And so since we did shift to online, it does get a little bit difficult for advisors to kind of be there because everything, like I said, is online. Marty, if you can drop like the website, it's unlv.edu/Finade. There's actually a new self-service like help center that students can log in with their ACE ID. They can submit questions, open cases, contact counselors with questions. They also have little FAQ knowledge articles that you can look at to see if someone has already previously asked your question and to get some more information. Also, if you're needing to submit any documents, any forms, to go ahead and get your information processed. If we're requesting any additional documentation, the verification process has now shifted online as well. So that is all there. We also still have our phone open, so students can still call in every day. The hours are also listed on the website for them to contact us. So please, if students have questions, please tell them to contact us. Because when I was speaking earlier about the income adjustment appeals, we don't know you need that sort of appeal or guidance or counseling until we are notified of that. So, we can't really help you if we don't know what the issues are. So please tell your students to contact our office as soon as possible if they have questions, if they need help filling out anything. We are here to help you with all of that.
And I would just do a very quick plug that because all of this is a lot of information, and like Megan started the workshop, I know that we have advisors on this call who don't work on campus. And so if all of this is a lot and you are not sure where to go, starting with student involvement activities staff, whether that's myself, Marnie, or Megan, can also be a good first email, call, stop, so that then we can help since we are extremely familiar. So I just want to do that quick plug.
Thank you, everyone. I'm looking at the time. I want to make sure. Oh, there were a couple questions that came in that I want. They're kind of around the same topic. And then also, if anyone has any questions that they're dying to get in, please make sure you add it to the chat, knowing that we only have a few minutes left. The theme on a couple of these questions has to do with finances, so mostly about student org finances. So a list of resources and rules for fundraising on campus. If you have specific questions about fundraising for your student organization, feel free to reach out to me. The very short version of a long story is if they are looking to fundraise anything more than about $1,000, they really want to go through the UNLV Foundation. The foundation really wants to help students through that. If they're doing small dollar things like Chipotle sales and those sorts of things, those don't have to run through the university. But anything that's going to raise more than about $1,000, we're going to want to work with the foundation, and the best person to do that for student organizations it's going to be two people. Either it's going to be Heather Rappaport, who is the development officer for student affairs, It's sort of like a catch-all for anything related to student organizations, and I can always connect you with them, work with you with them. Or if you are an advisor in a specific academic college, say the College of Engineering, each academic college has their own development officer that you can also work with, that works with in tandem with the foundation to help you with that. So that's really one thing to do. Also, there's questions about here about scholarships related to involvement and incentivizing students. Savannah, do you want to touch briefly on Csun scholarships? And then Kat, if there's anything else that you think you want to add to that.
Yes, and if Marnie, if you could put a link to the Csun website. So in addition to having student organization funding for student organizations, Csun does provide quite a few scholarships to individual students, and those do range. Some of them are identity specific, whether that's first year students or other identities that students may hold, but there are also leadership scholarships. There is scholarships for students who may be doing student teaching or other practicums and maybe need assistance in paying for school. And so there are a lot there for undergraduate students. So definitely check out that website.
Yeah, there are a ton of departmental scholarships out there. Like the College of Engineering has their own scholarships that students apply through the college and they get selected. So I would urge a lot of students to contact their college, their specific college, and see if they have any scholarship opportunities. And if so, what do they need to do to qualify, and how does the application process work? At the end of the day, we do end up processing those, but we don't have anything to do with the selection process or any of that. But I would have them contact the departments. There's a ton of money out there, and they would know best as to how students can apply for that.
And then also, Scott, I know there's a lot of like we've had a lot of like, I had this, I have no money and all of a sudden my car broke down, or I have this $500 thing. I know a lot of those referrals have come through you this year. Do you want to talk anything about that at all?
Sure. There's a fund called the SOS Fund, the Supporting Our Students Emergency Fund, which the Division of Student Affairs has started facilitating this calendar year. That allows students who are experiencing those smaller financial emergencies, like Marnie alluded to, car broke down, I have a dentist's bill, I need to buy a new phone, etc., because it broke or what have you, with up to a $500 grant, one-time grant per calendar year. The fund is sponsored by Charles Schwab, so they, as a corporation, are refilling the fund every so often. The money goes like this, to be perfectly honest. So the campus is notified when the fund is refilled and the application process gets reopened. We are anticipating it to be reopened over the summer, but we don't have a firm date at this point in time. When referrals come in, they go to both the SOS team looking at distribution of funds, as well as to the support team in case a student does disclose something related to their mental health or personal safety, where we could provide them a little bit of information too. So it's kind of like a package deal. If a student applies for that funding, they may get some pertinent information sent their way, and they may also be able to have funds directed toward them as well.
And then the last thing I would want to maybe add on the idea of finances, bringing it back to our student organizations, is the world might go back to being in person. Our campus might go back to being in person, but that doesn't mean everybody's life is going to be back on track in person in August. And student organizations, while there's a lot of help to supplement funding, student organizations can be expensive for students. Some student orgs have dues, some don't. All programming costs money. And so as an advisor, my recommendation to you all would be to keep that in the forefront of your mind as you have students who are so excited to plan in-person programming that all of a sudden they're planning things that are expensive and are going to put a financial burden on their students. Really keep that in mind. Think about how can you keep that same mindset we had this year of low cost, no cost programming, ideas, initiatives, and kind of keep that going even when all the students are just so excited to get back to the normal or what they view as normal. I would just put that out there as a caveat.
All right. Before we wrap up, I did want to acknowledge a few other campus partners that may be great resources for you. If we had all of these folks, it would be a humongous panel. Maybe we can do a part 2 of this with some other campus partners as well. There's so many great folks. But I did want to mention a few here. So SDSJ, Student Diversity and Social Justice in the Intersection, are amazing resources in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, either education, training for your organizations, just as a resource, an advocate, etc. Those are great resources. The Disability Resource Center as well. The Care Center, which was previously known as the Women's Center, so you may be familiar with that already. They did change their name to be more obviously inclusive to folks of all identities. So that's a great campus partner, as well as career services, especially for students who may be looking at some new employment opportunities and that type of thing. So when we send out the recording, we can give links to those various resources and their websites so you can easily find them, but definitely wanted to mention them here. So we're 1 minute till 5, so trying to stay on time here, but I wanted to first express gratitude to all of our advisors here. Thank you so much for spending your time and talent working with our student organizations. They just wouldn't be the same without you. So thank you so much for all of the things that you do, especially during this year. We can't say it enough how much we appreciate you. And thank you so much to our panelists for being here today as well, and sharing all of the wealth of knowledge that you have. We appreciate you as well. So thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone. And like I said, we'll get that recording out in the next few days. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.